Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today. Tonight on the WWE Network, they aired episode number 2 of WWE's Bring It to the Table. This is the show that's been sitting on hiatus for, I believe, 2 months. Episode 1 was aired back in January. From getting the behind-the-scenes scoops from being a fan of Peter Rosenberg and listening to the Cheap Heat podcast. He said that was shot somewhere around Christmas, and he didn't even know that they were going to run the episode on the WWE Network until, I believe, Sunday night. He was texted and was told that they were going to air the episode the next day after WWE's Monday Night Raw. I'm a big fan of Cheap Heat. We've had a few transitions, and it's going through another transitional period. Cheap Heat and Peter Rosenberg and Greg the Virgin Valentine have lost their co-host for the second time. Honestly, in my mind, one of the reasons why I originally started listening to Cheap Heat was to hear Shoemaker, and when Shoemaker left to leave to go follow. The guy from ESPN that left. Bill Simmons making the Andre the Giant documentary. I thought that was a real big kick in the pants. And honestly, I didn't listen to the show for a few weeks. And it popped up on my subscription feed. I listened to it. They had a new host, Brian Campbell, from at the time who wrote for ESPN, who just left the show and left ESPN, but on his last day published an article about the Savage versus Ricky Steamboat match at WrestleMania 3. It was really, really good. But when I heard that Peter Rosenberg was going to be joining the WWE Universe, joining the family, we've seen him host the kickoffs before pay-per-views. I think he's done that twice, maybe even 3 times. But him getting his own show was fucking awesome. Episode 1 knocked it out of the park. But to me, honestly, I felt that this should be almost a weekly show, if not bi-weekly show. This show, besides for flying in the talent, with that being JBL, this time Corey Graves, replacing Paul Heyman and Peter Rosenberg, I don't really know what it would take for them to do this. I mean, even if they shot this not at WWE Studios up there, if they just did it before Raw or did it before SmackDown, it would just be the easiest thing in the world. I'm sort of surprised that the third seat is become a rotating thing. If you went back and listened to episode number 1, I really thought that this would just be like, let's put Heyman and let's put JBL on the show, and then, we'll transition into putting Sam Roberts, who did get a name drop on the show. At the very end, it was, JBL hinting that he wanted Sam to be on the show next time. But in the episode this time, I can honestly say that Corey Graves knocked it out of the park. He did a really good part of giving his opinions, giving his ideas. Wasn't scared to answer the question about the porn WWE Survivor Series screw job porno flick that's going to be coming out. You could tell that JBL and Corey Graves didn't want to answer the question on television, didn't want to give a non-publicly correct answer that would get them in trouble, but Graves took it upon himself that no one was answering the question and went ahead and said, yeah, he'd check it out, and he wanted to see an advanced screening of it. You got to give him credit for that. I thought this was a really good episode. I really thought that it filled the gap of wanting this. I listen to PTI as a podcast every day. If I'm home, I watch it on TV, but most of the time, ESPN will upload it, about 2 hours after it's shown live on TV, and that's normally what I listen to on the way home from work. And this pretty much is a knockoff of PTI. But to be able to hear non-WWE Monday Night Raw or SmackDown thoughts about what is going on, not even on television, for them to cover The Randy Orton gym incident, where basically he went off on a fan, is it okay to approach WWE superstars and ask for pictures when they're not at events or not at Access? To talk about internet rumors of matches that are supposed to be happening at WrestleMania that haven't been announced on television. If you tune into SmackDown this week, there's no way in the world that they're going to hint that AJ Styles is going to have a match with Shane McMahon. Because, yeah, they had an argument on the end of SmackDown last week, and that rolled into Talking Smack. But they're not going to talk about a match that hasn't been offered yet. They're not going to talk about Internet Rumor. They're not going to talk about the Wrestling Observer. They're not going to talk about, the Torch. They're not going to talk about these other things that are out there. And that's what I like about the show. Really, really good stuff. I can honestly tell you, besides for the Kurt Angle interview, there's nothing on the episode that's going to be newsworthy. They talk about, the pros and cons of Goldberg. They talk about, Roman Reigns, and whether he turned heel or not. They talk about, the fans liking or not liking Roman Reigns. They talk about JBL's show getting canceled. Corey Graves mentioned that he had a show that was canceled. It's going to be good stuff. I'm looking forward to them getting their WrestleMania special, which will be coming up live from the Citrus Bowl WrestleMania week. They made it seem like Corey Graves is going to be the new guy in the seat. So I can honestly tell you that I did miss Heyman at first, but by the time the show was over, I didn't miss him anymore. So knocked it out of the park. Episode 2, can't wait for episode 3. Hopefully they can make a way to figure this out. If Rosenberg's going to be coming in and doing, the kickoffs for WWE pay-per-views, maybe you film an episode after the pay-per-view is over, where you can honestly sort of give your thoughts about the pay-per-view matches. You'll know where the feuds are going and what they're leading to, and maybe you show them the week after the pay-per-view. They could find a way to still keep them up to date without falling too far behind. I think this is a good thing. They need to keep it up.